Judas Priest just announced a couple of days ago that they will not be continuing their 50 Heavy Metal Years tour together with their touring guitarist Andy Sneap, and that they will continue to tour as a more powerful four-piece heavy metal band. And so first of all, let's cold-headedly take a look at the exact facts we know for sure about that decision, and then discuss a couple of possible outcomes for the band and the fans. Here you go. First of all, I'd like to underline that being a huge Judas Priest fan, and since this channel, among other things, is known for its Priest geekery, I deliberately waited for 48 hours after finding out about those news to record and publish this video, and only after realizing that the Judas Priest fans actually need this kind of space to discuss the matter, I decided to go through with it. And so this episode might not be as dynamic and will not feature the usual excerpts and have a lot of editing to it, yet its main purpose is of course to start a conversation, so please do not hesitate to comment on anything you hear or see in this video, and of course share your personal opinion on the matter. But alright, let's do it. After Glenn Tipton's announcement of his inability to join the band on their Firepower tour back in 2018, Judas Priest decided to hire Andy Sneap as their touring guitarist, especially given the fact that he was not actually a stranger to the band.
It was a really important day when Glenn said, you know, I think it's probably best if I step to the side and maybe we should let Andy come in.
Andy, of course, worked together with Judas Priest on their latest studio album, Firepower, which was released the same year as he joined the band on stage, and actually co-produced this outstanding record together with the legendary Tom Allen, who worked with the band throughout the 80s, releasing some of the most iconic and memorable Judas Priest records to date. I actually believe that that decision was one of the best ones the band could have taken at that time, since Glenn's announcement was such a shock for all of the fans, and Andy did not actually seem like a, proper replacement for the legendary Glenn Tipton, but rather like a temporary touring musician, and given the fact that the band felt comfortable working with him,
couldn't have happened in a better way if you want to try and make something good out of it.
And he was actually no stranger to Rob, Ian, and all the other guys on stage. Andy Sneap actually did a wonderful job for what he was actually hired for the next couple of years. And while he was not able to fill the shoes, because let's be realistic here, it is virtually impossible to fill the shoes of Glenn Tipton, I still think we have to thank Andy for carrying that very heavy load and helping Richie out on stage, even though the live guitar dynamics was of course rather different from what Judas Priest fans were used to. That arrangement of course has been going on for the past 3 years, and actually last June when Rob Halford joined us on the show for our Defenders of the Faith series interview, Metal God himself actually confirmed that it is pretty much a given that Andy will continue touring with Judas Priest on the consecutive 50 Heavy Metal Years tour.
Andy is still standing in that spot for Glenn with Glenn's blessing.
And that was the case for the first couple of shows the band was able to play last year before the unimaginable happened, and the band sadly once again had to postpone the remainder of their 50 Heavy Metal Years tour.
The fact that I'm here able to do it is, again, it just means everything.
Yet this Monday, a bunch of rock and roll medias, including Blabbermouth, Loudwire, and a couple of others, all posted the announcement that Judas Priest will continue their 50 Heavy Metal Years tour as a four-piece, and that means that they would perform without the second guitarist for the very first time since 1974. What? I'll be very much honest with you, after reading this, I went straight to Judas Priest's social media and saw absolutely no announcements. Then I went straight to my Metal Pilgrim inbox and I saw absolutely no message from Judas Priest PR agency, but after Blabbermouth posted a commentary by Andy Sneap himself saying that he was extremely disappointed about this decision, this is when I realized that this is actually true. Bob called me last Monday and said they wanted to move on as a four-piece, which I find incredibly disappointing after this amount of time, but I respect his decision as they obviously have a vision how they want this to play out. This always was a temporary situation, and like I've said before, I'll always help the band any way I can, and that applies going forward also. I've been a huge fan of the band since the early 80s, and it was mind-blowing to play on stage with the guys, and quite frankly terrifying in the beginning at such short notice. We are moving forward with a new album next month, and look forward to making a killer follow-up to Firepower. And of course, just about 24 hours later, the band themselves confirmed this decision and posted this on social media. Hello Maniacs, we are chomping at the British steel bit to return to world touring, celebrating 50 years of Judas Priest as an even more powerful, relentless, four-piece heavy metal band, with Glenn coming out on stage with us here and there as before. Big thanks to Andy for all you've done and continuing to be in the production team for our new album. See you all soon, headbangers. So, in order for us to go on, we need to sum up everything we know so far. Last week, Halford called Andy Sneap and said that the band would not need his services as a touring guitarist any longer. Yet at the same time, the band and Andy are going on good terms, since Andy Sneap will continue working and co-producing the next Judas Priest album, which, as we know, is already way long in the works.
Yes, it's true.
Glenn Tipton continues being a band member and will make occasional on-stage appearances together with Judas Priest. And despite any of the speculations, that is it. And so now let's take a look at how the band possibly can pull it off. Scenario number 1. The band actually goes through with their idea of performing only as a 4-piece and stays true to their own idea of minimizing the sample usage while they're performing on stage. In this case, it means that Richie would have to perform all of the main guitar parts. That means all of the rhythm section parts and all of the lead parts. That also means that the band simply will not able to perform at least some of the songs in their repertoire because of the harmonizing dual guitar parts, which are impossible to play either without a second guitar or without a sample. This would also, of course, put enormous pressure on Richie, who is a great guitarist by all means. Yet, given his recent health problems, I don't think that the band and the management would actually go through that. Yet, in order to be fair, I'd like to say that when Richie just joined the band and Glenn was still performing on stage and rocking out together with Judas Priest on every concert, Richie did in fact took up the parts only of KK Downing. Yet, if we take a look at the post-2018 performances by Judas Priest, I think it's rather noticeable for all die-hard Judas Priest fans that the guitar dynamics on stage has shifted quite a lot, with Andy Sneap performing most of the rhythm section parts and Richie picking up the parts of both KK Downing and Glenn Tipton on most of the recent shows they did. Yet I personally think that the band would not go through with this scenario of performing solely as a 4-piece and without any samples, unless Glenn Tipton's health situation has actually become a bit better in the recent time and he would be able to join not only for occasional song or two, but rather join the band on stage on each show that tour and perform rhythm section, at least for the most iconic songs. All in all, we do know for sure that Halford actually flew to the United Kingdom and met with Glenn Tipton just this Christmas, and who knows, maybe the guys decided that they could actually pull it off. Scenario number 2, the band will go through the idea of performing as a 4-piece, yet use samples while performing on stage. Believe it or not, but that scenario might actually be the most enjoyable in terms of the stage sound, yet at the same time the most unacceptable for many of the band's fans. Okay, let's be honest here. The fans' response to the band's announcement has been rather mixed. Okay, it was not mixed. Most of the fans hated the idea. Some even went as far as saying that they will sell their tickets to the upcoming shows or accuse the band of not willing to spend any extra money on an additional band member and thus asking the rest to boycott Judas Priest and their upcoming 50 Heavy Metal Years tour. Yet what I personally think is that both Judas Priest and the band's management actually know what they're doing, and I'm more than sure that they're very much aware of the fans' reaction to the announcement. And so I personally prefer to not concentrate on neither this scenario too much, nor the idea that Judas Priest do not know that the fans expect a certain dynamics on stage when they're coming to see Judas Priest live. And so if the band would actually go with this scenario, I think they would go for something extraordinary, and we would most likely see Glenn much more often than we expect on stage together with the band. Scenario number 3, the band will continue as a 4-piece for now. Right after the band announced that Judas Priest will not continue touring together with Andy Sneap, internet has burst in speculation on who would be the best replacement for Andy, who was in part replacement for Glenn Tipton, but not a real replacement, but only a touring one. And while I personally think that there are a lot of amazing candidates, and I honestly have my personal shortlist for that position as well, I don't think that there is any point of reciting all those names simply because it would be a speculation. Yet I would still like to point out just a couple of very interesting ones. One of the most suitable guys for that job would of course be George Lynch. George, in addition to being an amazing guitar player, also has a very distinctive stage presence which would definitely be noticeable on a Judas Priest show. In addition, we know that Lynch, who played at Dokken and a bunch of other bands as well, has a rather good relationship with a bunch of Judas Priest band members. Yet the only problem with that candidacy would be that I'm not exactly sure that Richie Faulkner would feel comfortable touring together with his dad-in-law.
Exactly.
Another very interesting and rather unexpected candidate for that position would be Tommy Thayer of Kiss. Just like with any other person on that list, that would of course be just a speculation and a rumor, yet this one is rather interesting given Tommy's theatrical performances and the fact that one of our subscribers has actually overheard that rumor from two businessmen who were talking business, not music. And of course there are hundreds of other amazing guitar players from all across the world who would be a great replacement for Andy Sneap on tour together with Judas Priest. I even think that there is one person in this world who already knows pretty much all of the guitar parts for the entire Judas Priest discography except for a couple of albums. And I'll be honest with you, as a longtime Judas Priest fan, I would be a liar if I would say that I would not wish for KK Downing to reunite together with the guys. I actually feel like a grown-up kid of two divorced parents who, while I'd love for them to reunite and be one family once again, actually not want them to reunite simply because they felt pressure from their grown-ass kids, and only do so if they would actually put all of their differences aside and leave everything they said behind them. Either way, after the announcement, I simply couldn't resist and actually went on and analyzed all of the latest KK Downing and Tim Ripper Owens interviews. And I guess I could have said that KK's rhetoric about the whole Judas Priest situation has changed a lot in the last couple of months, and the whole idea that Rob Halford actually flew to the United Kingdom and spent some time there could mean something, but realistically that would simply be me, an old Judas Priest fan, trying hard to find something which just most likely isn't there. And so if I would have to bet my money, I would actually not bet it on Judas Priest reunited with KK Downing, but rather inviting someone else to perform with them on stage. I think there is no one Judas Priest fan who did not feel surprised by the band's latest announcement. And I, of course, am no exception. And yet, while I have enormous respect for Andy Sneap not only as a producer but also as an amazing guitar player, I for some reason never actually considered him to be a part of this band. Most likely because Judas Priest pointed this out several times and underlined it that he's not. And therefore, I was absolutely not heartbroken by that announcement. I was rather very confused. Confused because I simply cannot imagine how some of the Judas Priest songs, especially the ones I love the most, can possibly be played with just one guitar on stage. And yet, one thing is absolutely clear. Judas Priest have been around for more than 50 years. And I think at this stage of their career, the guys know what they're doing. And therefore, I, as a longtime Judas Priest geek, while do not understand this decision, choose to trust the band and the management, and especially knowing how much they actually monitor social media and fans' response to every decision they make, and the fact that this decision has not been spontaneous and I want to believe was very well thought through. But I guess we'll see in just a couple of months. And for now, what I'm really curious to find out is what do you guys personally think about this whole situation? Which scenario out of the ones we described, or maybe the ones that we actually missed, is the most realistic given the situation we're in right now, and which you personally think would be the best possible outcome for Judas Priest right now? Please let us know in the comments. I'm very curious to find out. As always, thank you so much for watching this spontaneous video, guys, and keep rocking.